Hello and welcome. There are 100 people now signed in, and so I'm not going to give too many more minutes before we start the presentation. I will just give the welcome and a quick description. Those of you who've been signed in for a few minutes will have noticed a notice across the top of the previous screen, which asks you to use your phone or tablet or another window on a browser to go to www.menti.com and use the code 863815 in order to interact with this presentation. The title of today's presentation is The Future Ready PMO. Our speaker is Emma-Ruth Arnaz-Pemberton. She will introduce herself. My name is Hugo Mini. I'm a member of the PMI UK Digital Events team. This session will be interactive. We want you to participate. If you do, we guarantee that you will enjoy the experience and learn more from it, and you will learn from each other. So if you use your phone, laptop or tablet, open up another window in your browser or whatever tool you've got and go to menti.com, then and enter the code, then it will be available. That code will be available on every slide where there's a question. Then you'll be able to answer our audience participation questions, and that will give you a huge opportunity to learn from each other. Hugo, that's me. I will facilitate a short Q&A with Emma at the end of the session. Please submit your questions via GoToWebinar. I don't know if you have access to the chat screen on GoToWebinar. You should be able to click on it or onto the question screen, or alternatively, once again, you can switch between two apps. You can switch between the Menti app and the GoToWebinar app on your phone or tablet. And that's how you'll use it to click on and put questions into GoToWebinar, as well as working with menti.com. The webinar will be recorded and the slides will be made available to you later today. There is a PDU code for today. We'll be emailing that out to everybody who attended. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Hugo, and thank you everybody for joining today. So we're going to be talking about the Future Ready PMO, and I thought I would do some introductions first. So I'll introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions using the Mentimeter technology. So my name is Emma-Ruth Arnaz-Pemberton. I'm the Director of Consulting Services at Wellington. We're a company. I'll tell you a little bit about us, or a little bit more about us. We're a consulting firm here in the UK. I'm pretty involved with the industry. I'm a PMO specialist at heart. I work alongside PMI Spain and the UK. I'm also an APM fellow, and I chair the PMO specific interest group for them. And within IPMA, I'm involved with the Innovation and Change SIG. At Wellington, I'm kind of the head of sustainability and corporate social responsibility. So as my boss says, I care about the trees and the polar bears. So one of the notable things that we do around that space is our Project Management Day of Service, which is in conjunction with Project Management for Change, where we invite charities who don't have time or money for consultancy, and we get people like you to join us for the day and give them some pro bono help. So it's a really great day that we run on an annual basis. Wellington are also involved with the PMO Value Ring. We're the UK partner, and I'm a certified consultant. And I run our Wellington flagship event, which is our Future PMO conference, which is dedicated to bringing globally PMO people together to kind of learn from each other and advance the industry. On social media, you can find me. I am PMO Ninjas for two reasons. I really like ninjas, and I do think that if you think about what PMO do, a lot of the stuff we do, we kind of quite stealthy doing stuff in the background to make things better for our organizations. So you can find me on PMOninjas.com. There's lots of videos and resources there specifically for PMO. So before I move on and tell you a little bit about Wellington, I'm going to hand back over to Hugo to start looking at the Mentimeter questions and get to know you a little bit. So first question, where in the world are you joining us from? Hugo?
Yes, this is my first go at this, so I'm struggling a teeny little bit to make sure I'm on the right screen at the right time.
So this is always a very interesting question when we start to see the demographic of the people joining us who are interested in the world of PMO. Certainly we have a very global following with some of the associations that we have. We have lots of organizations out there all over the world that are doing PMO type work. So this is always a great question to find out where you are, and the second question, which is all around what you do for a living. And we can start to see some of our responses later by the role that you do. So whether you work within PMO or whether you work as a project manager or maybe a leader of project management within your organization. How are we getting on, Hugo? Here we go. Excellent. So as we mentioned, the first question was, where in the world are you from? So hopefully you just saw that one pop up, and the visuals will be appended to the slide deck so that we can see them after the event. And question 2, which everybody is starting to answer now, what project related role do you typically perform? So we can see we've got lots of project delivery people, PMO related kind of work, whether that's in a formal PMO or an enabling function that does or uses some of those skills to support the organization. And it's great to see that we've got lots of leadership in here as well to kind of understand what the future of PMO might look like, particularly during this time and the future of whatever that might end up looking like. So we can see we've got PMO and project delivery kind of evening out a bit, not that it's a competition at all. Great, so we've got 93 responses. Thank you, Hugo, that's really interesting. And like I say, we will tie some of those questions back a little bit later once we get to that. So let's have a look at Wellington. So we're a PPM consulting firm. We have our HQ in Windsor in the UK. We also have an office in Dublin in Ireland and in Madrid, Spain. And we also have partners in Latin America, a company called G360, who really help us to deliver training out there. We are involved across a number of different streams, if you like, so everything from technology to consultancy to training. And we do annual research every year, which gives us lots of insight into what the industry is doing, both project management, including the PMO. In terms of who we are, we have some accreditations and partnerships that we're really proud to maintain. Uniquely, we're the only Microsoft Gold partner that is also accredited by the Association for Project Management, which is the chartered body for the profession here in the UK. And in terms of PMO credentials, we are the UK partner of the PMO Global Alliance, and we support and run the PMO Global Awards that they do. And we've recently been accredited as a leader in PMO training. So we have lots of accredited courses through the APM, which are dedicated to PMO people. So that's it in terms of an introduction. You will get my contact details at the end of this webinar if you do want to find out any other information. But let's go into what we're going to look at today. So we're really looking at some of the more technical aspects of PMO in this webinar. We're going to look at the current challenges that we're all facing now that we have this COVID-19 outbreak, and our world has fundamentally changed, not just for PMO, but for everybody. And we're also going to explore developing a plan to kind of make your PMO strong for the future. So this is our agenda. We're going to explore some of the current challenges that PMOs are facing right now. We're also going to look at what getting future ready actually means in terms of a PMO. We're going to find some strategies so that you can review how your PMO is performing, and then looking at building a roadmap and how we implement that remotely. So some really interesting topics which are very close to my heart. So next, I'm going to ask you another question. So I'm going to hand over back to Hugo to find out if your PMO is seen as a value-adding business partner within your organization. Hugo? Hopefully everybody's already filling that question in on the app itself. And we'll be able to see the result in just a second, hopefully. Are you there, Hugo?
Has it come up? Obviously
Nope.
not. It says it has. I'm going to switch back to Ruth, and then I'm going to switch back to me again.
Okay, thank you.
in just a way of trying to get the technology to do what I would expect it to do.
We can see the PMI header now. So I think it is sharing. Here we go. So most of you seem to think that, yeah, mostly you're seen as a value-adding business partner, but you do have some non-believers, which is pretty typical in most PMOs. We've got just over a quarter of people that, you know, people think we're great, the rest not so much, and 10%, or yeah, 10 people at the moment are saying actually no one really gets us, we're not sure. And we've got a pretty healthy amount of people saying, yeah, actually people really support the PMO, which is really important given the current situation. And we will talk about some of the challenges next. So thank you for that, Hugo. That's really, really useful. Good to see that, you know, 50 people are, you know, we will always have some non-believers no matter when we're trying to put any kind of structure or any kind of discipline into an organization, but it's good to see these numbers. They make me quite happy. Thanks, Hugo. I'll go back to share my screen now, if that's okay. Thanks. Okay, so let's have a look at the current challenges that we're finding during this, particularly this COVID-19, where we're all working more remotely. So there are three key areas that we're going to explore a little bit today: communication, the services that the PMO offer, and also the PMO strategy and how that ties into the business. So within communication, we're seeing a lot of home life blurring. I don't know about you, but certainly I generally travel quite a lot for my job, and I found the first few weeks of lockdown quite tough. I struggled to get focused. I had days where I felt like I achieved very little, whereas I had other days where I was, you know, working solidly for 12 hours without noticing. And part of that is because working in the home environment is a challenge anyway, because there's always something to do at home, right? There's always washing to put on, or I'll go and make a cup of tea, and there's really easy ways to procrastinate. But also we lose that at this time I'm going to leave home and I'm going to start work, and at this time I'm going to finish work and I'm going to go back to my kind of home environment. So we are seeing a lot of that, and people have struggled, certainly people like me have struggled to find a good balance. And now I have a little routine, and my home life blurring is a lot more reduced. It's not completely gone. I don't think it ever will be. And what we also tend to find are people who have, you know, small children at home. So you've got the added pressure of having to also, you know, school and teach and keep these little people entertained. And I don't know about you, but certainly some of the calls that I'm having with clients, the new normal is, you know, there's a child sat on someone's lap, or there's a cat walking across the screen. And that's one of the key things that I think we need to consider. And if you look at any of my posts, quite a lot of the stuff I talk about is that we have to remember that we're human first and we're PMO second. So we must remember that, especially in this time. And I'm going to kind of talk about a couple of each of these individual challenges. So disconnection versus overconnection. Think about it, it's lunchtime, you're on a webinar, we're overly connected across so many different mediums at the moment, but at the same time, we're not really connecting on a human level. So there's a real balance to find there between we're just constantly online with, you know, Microsoft Teams and Zoom and GoToWebinar and emails and our phones and everything else. But we're actually missing that human perspective, that human touch to our connections. So it's really important that, for me, I think it's really key that we just take the time to use the cameras when we can, so that we can look people in the eyes, and never assume that everybody, just because they're at home, that they're having really meaningful conversations and meaningful time. Some people are finding it pretty difficult. Expectation setting is one of my favorite topics. We get an email, I must immediately respond to this email. I read a really interesting book a couple of years ago that changed the way that I work. It's called How to Be a Productivity Ninja. And one of the key things now that I think I've learned from that experience of changing the way that I work is that if it's really urgent, they'll probably ring me or they'll send me a Teams message. And I actually switch my email off at certain times of the day so that I can focus on doing things. So setting the expectation that, yeah, we're at home, lots of us are more productive, but we shouldn't feel like we have to consistently almost justify why we're at home by sending lots and lots of emails. The last one I'm going to touch on in terms of communication is when you do speak to somebody, make sure you summarize conversations. People have got a lot going on around them when they're working from home, and that from a PMO perspective, we need to make sure that the messages are getting through. So do take time to summarize the conversation at the end of your call, and maybe send an email to kind of help with that, to make sure that the other person or people actually get the actions, the message, and the key points that you were trying to put across. The next big challenge is all around the services of the PMO, and this is something that I found with quite a lot of different PMOs that have been in touch with me to kind of understand, how on earth do I do governance and assurance remotely? We're so used to having our regular board meetings, project board, program boards, governance boards, portfolio boards, stage gate meetings, all the different governance and assurance, that people are actually struggling to feel like they're getting the same value out of those in a remote setting. Because I can't have somebody sat next to me and like, okay, you say you have this, prove it, show me the document. Because we are using technology, but again, we're losing that human connection. Also, progress of projects, programs, and different initiatives in the organization. It's okay getting that status report at the end of the fortnight or the end of the month. I was reading some research from McKinsey that basically said a lot of the stuff that we used to ask for monthly, because of the coronavirus lockdown, people are asking for it much more regularly. So status reporting is moving towards weekly, because people feel disconnected from what's actually happening on the ground, because we can't just walk across and tap someone on the shoulder and, oh, let's grab a coffee and see where you are. And the other thing that we found with PMOs is that now the need for them to do their role is not clear. So if we were in the office, we were probably doing some coaching, some mentoring, some training, revising and updating our methods and standards, as well as doing the governance and assurance. And with the challenges that we have, their role is no longer clear for some PMOs. So what they find is they've gone really, really tactically focused on making sure we're getting the data out of people, which is not where we want PMO to focus on. But at the moment, without having the know-how to kind of elevate the PMO again to do some of the other stuff, we're having to just respond to the need for data, more often, more clear. Lastly, I'm going to talk about strategy. And this really, from a PMO perspective, comes down to job security. So we know that there are lots of people have been furloughed. We know that there have been PMOs that have been disbanded recently in some organizations. So really being at home, working in the PMO, being tactically focused, not necessarily having that human connection or really understanding what people need you to do. We need to, it gets compounded in terms of stress and anxiety around what's the organizational direction. Have we furloughed lots of people? What's going to happen when we go back? Has the world fundamentally changed? Resource availability. If people aren't there anymore, then they can't work. They're not allowed to work if people have been furloughed. So we need to start thinking more about, well, how do we get this stuff done? Or do we just stop a lot of work? Also, the future scope. What will the future of PMO look like? It's a big unknown for lots of people at the moment, and that's why I'm doing this webinar, and I've done a series of videos about getting your PMO strong in order to go back to whatever normal is going to look like in the future, to really put some effort into that now, so that we are strong and resilient as a PMO moving forward. So hopefully that's given you an insight into some of the conversations that I'm having within the industry, that people are having challenges around the current way of working and the role of PMO. So when we think about being future ready, we need to consider a number of things. And the first is the organization itself. Are you working in a big old organization that has not really been impacted by COVID due to the scale, or are you in an industry that has been fundamentally impacted? So if we think about construction, a lot of stuff stopped up until a week ago or so. So you have to consider what the future of the organization might end up looking like. Has your organization, or will your organization have to fundamentally change one or two of its key services that it offers to customers, because people's expectation is that we will be more digital from now on. You also need to consider your customers. And when we say your customers, I'm talking about the customers of the PMO. During my PMO practitioner course, this is one of the things that I always say: if you take nothing away from today other than you have customers, rather than stakeholders and sponsors and project managers, the PMO is offering a service to a set of customers. And the minute you treat them like customers, you reframe your whole relationship with them. So we need to really put the customers at the heart of what we do. And to do that, you've got to consider the next point: what are their challenges right now? Are people finding it really difficult organizationally to work remotely because we've been thrown into it, we don't have a choice, we maybe haven't understood the technology up until we've had to use it, maybe there's network challenges. What are people struggling now that they need the PMO to help them with? And then looking at those challenges is then translating that into what's likely to be important in the future. So let's say in, I don't know, 3 months' time, the world goes back to normal, we all go back to work. What's likely to be important? Is it about doing and understanding the right system landscape for us to be able to continue to work? Are people going to be likely to be working more remotely than they were before? What do they need? How do we make sure that the PMO is ready to deal with what is going to be important? And the only way to identify that is to consider where you work, who your customers are, what they need, what we're finding difficult at this time, and how that translates into, actually, that's going to be a real area of focus for us. Making sure that we are training our people, giving them enough headspace to do education around how we work might be one of the new things that you need to consider, given the landscape that we're in today. So now that we understand a little bit about being future ready, we need to consider your PMO and some of the areas that you could potentially think about in changing and innovating. And I picked out five key areas, I would say. The first one is, what does your community look like? What does your community space, your PPM community in your organization? Has it continued if you had one before? Is this something that actually, if people are struggling with finding how to do things and really getting that human connection, is this something that you could start to build now so that there is an ability to share knowledge and to collaborate a little bit more? Collaborate on maybe developing our methods and standards now that we're working more remotely and we don't have people to necessarily sign a piece of paper. So community is a really important piece for me, that whenever I set up a PMO, there's always a community infrastructure of sorts that's kind of there at the end to really keep that going. The next one is all about capability. Just because you might be tech savvy and you understand all the technology that's out there, maybe not everybody's in the same boat. So we need to start thinking about giving people the ability to really trial and error different systems. We also, from a future perspective, need to think about how we train people in our ways of working in the future. So 3 of my core pillars when we develop training for PMO are 3 things. Project-based learning. It's no good saying, this is theory, go away and then put that theory into your reality, because that's a really hard thing for people to do. Reflective practice. Actually take a step back and understand, what do you do well? What can you leverage? And where are the areas that you need to improve? Really take the time to sit back and consider that. We're so busy all the time that we don't do much reflective practice, either as PMOs or even as humans to some degree. So it's actually a really important practice that we need to get better at. And also critical thinking. As humans, we do tend to go straight into solution mode. If I have a problem, I can immediately figure out, I think, what the answer is going to be. Actually, we need to do some critical thinking and really get down to the root cause, whether that's using, some of the risk analyses that are out there, some benefits mapping, to really get to the root of any problem or opportunity that you have. One of my favorites that I quite like is the 5 whys analysis. It's like, just keep asking why this is happening until you eventually will find that root cause. The next area that you might want to consider is governance. So how do we categorize our activities right now? Probably in a lot of organizations, we have a methodology for our projects, one for our programs, and a way to manage our portfolio. And if it's deemed a project, it goes through those 5 steps, or however many steps you have. Now that we're working from home, we need to be a bit more pragmatic in the way that we categorize and prioritize our activities. So this is a really good chance to look at how can we do this better? How can we do it so that it engages people, even though they're not necessarily in the office, they're not going to be in a room, looking us in the eyes, to have that grown-up conversation. So we do need to be a little bit more pragmatic about that. The next one, consideration to changes your standards. So scalability, is everything that you do as simple and clear as it can be? If you're not there, somebody can't just come and knock on your door and walk in, then we need to make sure that everything that we have available for our customers to use is simple as it can be, depending obviously on your reality, your industry. Some industries have to work in a more complex way, but that's where categorization comes into play, and actually being able to scale the models that you use to say, this is pretty small, so actually it doesn't need that much governance, but this one's huge, so we know we need to apply some more logic around it. And then lastly, in terms of considerations, what does your network look like at the moment? Have you got partnerships? Do you negotiate with other departments for resources and things like that? Are you maintaining that network in a positive way? Are you doing benchmarking and looking at what other people are doing? Or are you kind of in your own PMO bubble in your industry, which is really easy to get into that trap that we kind of don't step out of that bubble. So your network is fundamental for your PMO to be successful. And one of the reasons for that is because of the PMO principles. So at Wellington, we believe that these 5 principles bind all PMOs together. So regardless of the size, the type, the model, whatever you want to call your PMO, these 5 principles are at the heart of what we're trying to achieve. You don't have to be great at all of them, but you do need to have them in the back of your mind. The first one is that PMOs, we're an instrument of integration. Think about it. We have more access across the organization than many other departments. So building that network so that if somebody comes to us and says, I have a problem with X, we can point them in the right direction. Managing, growing and maintaining a really good network of knowledge base is fundamental to what PMO can do in terms of adding real value to the organization, being that hub, that integrator of people, data, information, knowledge, whatever. The next one is customer focused. Like I say, I will say it again, if you take nothing away other than this, stop calling people stakeholders, project managers, sponsors, call them customers, because you'll treat them very differently. You'll put them at the heart of what you do. You'll ask them what they need. Your company probably would never go to market with a product that they hadn't done any customer testing or any customer research. And yet in PMO, we do that all the time. We develop stuff, we push it out because we believe it's the right thing to do. We need to take the time to understand our customers. The next PMO principle is about enabling capability, both of our PMO team and of our customers, the people who are delivering projects day to day. We need to make sure that whatever we're doing, we build a new process, a new method, that we give it to them with some capability support so that they feel confident in doing their role and delivering benefit to the organization. The 4th PMO principle is we want to be the single source of truth. I'm sure any of you that have either worked with PMO, worked in a PMO alongside, or are a customer of the PMO, a lot of the times when we set up PMOs, that this is one of the key things that people ask us for. I just want a single source of truth. It has to be respected. And at the moment, information is coming from all over the place. So this is something, a strategy that you need to really think about, to be that trusted single source of truth about the way that your organization is managing change. And the last one, supporting a learning organization. There's always a debate around lessons learned, lessons identified in the industry. Either way, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of madness. So as a PMO, we're in a perfect position to support our organization to learn better. So now that I've got you thinking about that kind of thing, what I'd like you to do now is go back to Mentimeter and let me know, what areas of innovation do you think your PMO needs to focus on? So given what I've just said, is it around governance? Is it around standards? Is it around that community piece or that network? What do you think is important for your PMO to work on at this time? That's a really small word cloud. There we go. So again, we've got communication and collaboration. It's really interesting that maybe 5 years ago, if we asked people, you know, what are the core skills that we need, then we tended to focus on really technical stuff. And the PMI Pulse of the Profession that was released late last year started to really kind of show that that's turning on its head. And actually, the skills that are coming out on top in terms of what we need to be successful in PMO is collaboration, communication skills, you know, managing our customers a bit better. And we can see there that standards and governance, absolutely, they're key to what we do and what we should be doing. Education is coming out quite high as well, which again, super important. If we don't teach people how to use the great stuff that we're developing, it will be useless and we will fail. What else have we got here? Agile ways of working. Yeah, there's a difference between being agile and having agility in your PMO, and you need to define that distinction really clearly for your organization. Many people said to me, oh, you need to make us agile. And, you know, they're not a software development company. They have a lot of business change projects. And actually what they want is a little bit of, you know, a little bit of both. We still want to justify our business case. We still want to control, close our projects in a controlled fashion. But we do need that level of agility, and taking the principles from lots of different ways of working and kind of putting them together seems to be one of the ways that's winning out. We call that project management bricolage, because you're kind of building the right toolkit for the project based on the skills that you have and the things that that project needs in order to succeed. And we can see that data analytics has just popped up. Absolutely super important right now. Like I said, in terms of data and how we're collecting information as a PMO or as an organization, lots of organizations are reporting that they've gone from, oh, we report on this monthly, to I want to know on a weekly basis how we're doing. So data analytics, doing something with that data to turn it into useful information so we can make informed decisions about the future of our initiatives and our businesses are really, really important. So that's a really interesting, I love that word cloud, it's got some really great words. And just so you know, obviously we're kind of plowing through this stuff. What we will do is we'll write an article with some of the Q&A and some of the insights from these questions. Thank you, Hugo, that's really great. So I'm just going to show my screen again. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So now we're going to look at strategies to make this into something that you can tangibly use. And we're going to look at PMO performance. And what's really interesting about PMO performance is, if I ask, I should have asked, actually, we should have had this question. How many of you report on project performance? I'm assuming that all of you that work within alongside a PMO are either giving project performance information, or you're collecting project performance information and then sanitizing it, making sure it looks right, and then kind of reporting on it at a higher level. What's really interesting is that not very many PMOs report on their own performance. And that's partly because it's quite hard to do. Not impossible, but you do have to think outside the box a little bit. But I always find it interesting that we're reporting on how other people are performing, but not necessarily ourselves. And that's one of the things that, in order to be strong and resilient for after COVID, we need to focus on our performance. The first thing I'm going to recommend is do some benchmarking. There are lots of organizations out there, there are lots of groups out there that are happy to share how they do stuff. So there are ways and means for you to actually look at what else is happening in the industry that you're in and understand what other people are doing. There's lots and lots of new technology, new ways of working that are cropping up all the time. But fundamentally, project management is project management. You can't be an early adopter of everything, but it's important to know what is out there, what are people using, because like I said, with project management bricolage, if there's a new fangled way of doing things, maybe it's got some principles that we can apply, but we don't have to throw out our old ways of working, not by any stretch. So I do recommend that you do some benchmarking. The next one is to do a PMO MOT. Let's see if your PMO could pass its MOT today. And at the end of this webinar, and it's something that you can download from the handout section of this webinar, you'll also receive a load of links if you want to download it at a later time. You will be given access to a PMO MOT tool. It's free, it's in Excel, it's not coded, and it will allow you to go through and do that test on your MOT. It's personalizable as well, if that's a word, in the sense that you can add your own elements, and you'll receive all the links so you can see where to download it and how to use it. There's a little video that will actually show you how to use it as well. And yeah, if you're feeling brave, share your result. Let's see how many of our PMOs would actually pass their MOT. And for those of you who are international, the tool is available in English and in Spanish. Next, do some reflective practice. Take some time and really think about the services that you're offering at the moment. Also, the services that you will need to offer. Go back to that slide around what's difficult now, today. Not what was difficult before COVID, before we were all working remotely, because we already probably knew about some of that, but really take the time to consider what's difficult now, and is any of that going to be important in the future? And if no one else is going to pick it up, let's get the PMO to support our businesses through whatever is coming. The next one, do a maturity assessment. My biggest word of warning with maturity is do not assume your maturity level. Always go out and get a maturity assessment done. If you do that, it will not only give you key independently reviewed strengths and opportunities, and also a basic roadmap as to this is the order you might want to look at things in terms of improving your maturity. It's a really key thing that you can then do every year or every 2 years. We tend to work on for PMO and a planning horizon of 2 years, just to not assume that you're at level 3 of 5. A lot of the time, people tend to be at one end of the scale or another. They either are hypercritical of themselves and they'll put themselves at a really low score, or they'll be super enthusiastic and they'll put themselves as high as they can be. So do go out and get that independent view of where you are from a maturity perspective. And lastly, don't do any of this stuff on your own. Even if you're a team of one, your customers, some of your customers will be interested in being involved in your journey and helping you to make things better. So don't do any of this alone. If you do it alone, it's your perspective. And we know, I'm sure you've heard all before, perspectives are very subjective. My perspective of what's important might be very different to yours. It's one of the reasons a lot of PMOs fail. They don't ask, set me up a PMO. Okay, I'll set you up a Ferrari. Actually, what they needed was a horse and cart. So it's really important that we don't do it in isolation in that bubble. Once you've done that, then we need to start thinking about designing your roadmap. So again, reflect and identify some of the key areas and considerations that you have in your organization. The next, understand the value of it. There's no point you offering 30 different services if only 3 of them add actual value. They might seem really sexy and they might seem really interesting for you, but you're working for your customers. So you need to understand the value relative to everything else that's going on in the organization. Standards and methods are really valuable in most organizations. But if your organization is already using professional project managers and never uses accidental project managers, is it going to add as much value as, let's say, benefits management? Maybe not, because those people are already project managers. So they're just going to work in the way that they work, which is project management. So you need to understand the value relative to your reality. Next, this is a concept that we use in one of our courses, which is understand which of your services are painkillers or antibiotics. So think about it. Some of our services are like painkillers. I have a headache, I take some paracetamol, and it kind of masks the problem until the situation resolves itself. Doesn't have any side effects. It just kind of happens. It's pretty quick as a general rule. Some of our services are like that. We can put them in. It's a quick fix. We can do it low hanging fruit, all of those buzzwords that you want to use, and they'll immediately add a burst of value. Other services are like antibiotics. So I have a problem, I take some antibiotics, and just like some of our services, they take a while to take hold. They take a while to start showing value, and they might come with some side effects like nausea. If you've ever put in a PMO into any organization or tried to redevelop one, you will know that there's a lot of nausea that comes with that particular activity. So some of our services are like that. They take longer for us to really get to grips with the problem and really find out what the issue is until we start to see benefits. So identify whether you've got painkiller services or antibiotic services, and then that will help you to design the metrics that you need to report on your performance, on the performance of how well you are delivering those services. And the last part is to develop the map. So make sure you don't have all of your painkillers up front. Think about the law of diminishing returns. The perception of value will diminish over time, not because you're not adding value, but because people get used to it, like the norm. But if you space out antibiotics and painkillers over a period of time, you'll be able to keep that perception of value by delivering different services over a longer period of time. In terms of implementing virtually, this is just some high-level steps. Obviously, we're all working in a very remote fashion right now. If you're going to start to redesign things, step one for me, I've said it before, don't do it alone. Make sure everyone is involved and interested and bought into what you're trying to achieve. You can develop the greatest process, but if no one else is involved or thinks it adds value, it will just go into a drawer and no one will ever look at it again. Step two, for working virtually, make work packages more digestible than normal. So whereas you might have said, do this for 3 weeks, then let's break it down into 3 times 3 1 week sessions so that we can really make it digestible for people. So if they do have a lot of distractions at home, it just doesn't seem as daunting for them, and they're more likely to be able to deliver for you. Step three, make sure you've got the needs, the scope, and what success looks like in the profile of redeveloping your PMO. What does success actually mean? Is it everybody's using the same consistent way of working? Is it that we've got business cases for stuff? Are we using stage gates? Do we have a community of however many people we want? What does success actually look like for you? And this will be different for every PMO. Step four, make sure you can measure progress, either through technology or through the human touch points. Remember, we are human first, PMO second. Step five is give people an opportunity to give updates, and working virtually is more important than ever to praise progress. I know I've certainly had days where I kind of get to the end of the day and I'm like, I have achieved nothing today. And it's really easy to beat ourselves up. So it's more important than ever now to let people have the chance to speak and tell people what they've been doing and praise any progress that they've made. Obviously, we're not going to be gushing about everything and everyone, but it is important that people feel like the work they're doing is validated. And step six, be thoughtful. People have a lot going on right now. We have a lot of technology. You're probably using 3 or 4 different systems before you even look at your phone or your email. So if you're going to launch something new, do it thoughtfully. Use different channels. Don't just send everything on a corporate grade email or whatever your corporate color is. Make sure that you're using different ways of engaging. The technology that we're using has lots and lots of stuff. You've seen Mentimeter today. There's lots of different whiteboards and stuff like that. So make sure that you do this in a thoughtful fashion. Okay, we're nearly at the end. So I mentioned the PMO MOT assessment. It is free to download. Again, you can do it directly on the handouts tab in your GoToWebinar panel, or you can go to our websites. You'll also get the links in the email from PMI. It is in English and in Spanish, and there is also on the links we'll give you, there is also a how to use it website video, so that you can kind of work your way through, and you can see an example of a PMO MOT result in there. I'm not going to spoil the fun and tell you what all the icons mean. You'll have to figure that out. You'll have to figure that out by using the tool and watching the video. So I'm nearly done. The other thing is to stay in touch with me. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere like that. You can contact me directly, or you can learn more about Future PMO. And before we go, I'd like to ask one more question, which is all about reflective practice. Based on what you've heard today, is there anything that you would do differently? Or maybe anything that we've validated that you think, yeah, I'm really glad that I do that already. What have you learned? So Hugo, can we get the responses up?
So they should have come up this time.
No, we can just see the PMI header page again.
They haven't. I should take it back and take it back again.
Okay. Hopefully you guys are all furiously writing all the good things that you've picked up from today. Still got, there we go, cool. Do a PMO MOT, yes, do a PMO MOT. It's simple, you can do it with your team. It's a little bit of fun as well. Customer, really important. Like I say, if there's one thing that will change your perspective on how you work with people, it's just call them customers. And ask them, yeah, absolutely. Your company wouldn't go to market with a new product without doing some consumer testing. So we shouldn't be doing that either. They're on the ground, absolutely feeling the pain of every day, particularly now when there are lots of distractions, there are lots of challenges and things like that. Engagement, key. One of the main reasons, so there was a PMI report last year, not PMI, IPMA, I think it was November, and the people that they spoke to, 30% of them had disbanded a PMO in that year. And when they were asked why, it was the perception of value. So the perception of value, like I said, is very subjective. So if you don't ask them, if you don't ask your customers, yeah, you want me to set up a PMO, what do you actually expect this to do? Don't forget that not everybody speaks project speak. So their perspective is going to be different to yours. So it's some really, really good comments. Breaking projects down into smaller chunks. For right now, I know our project plans might be bigger if we do it, but for right now, it's going to really help people to digest what you want them to do. And yeah, get the global perspective. Absolutely. See what's out there. There's lots and lots out there. There's an ebook that I've written that's coming out next week, which is all about how we kind of look at categorizing our projects and making sure that we do it using that kind of more global perspective, so that everybody's talking the same language. Communication channels, you've got loads. I'm sure you've all either in Microsoft or in Google. So get to grips with what you've got, because you've got some really funky stuff that you can be using with your teams right now. So learn it, have a play with it. You're not going to break anything probably, but yeah, have a play with it, and don't be afraid for your PMO to do things a little bit differently. Some awesome comments, which I can't wait to read them all and then write something around the insights that we've gained from this. Really, really good. I like this time for reflection, curiosity and trust. Curiosity is one of the things that we lose as we grow older. We're born with lots and then we kind of get ground down by the day-to-day. Be curious and be brave with your PMO. Don't be afraid to be a little bit different. Amazing. And yeah, that single source of truth, 99% of my clients who say, I want a PMO, we say why, they will always, part of that why is we want a single source of truth. So if you work to that and you can be that trusted, that's going to make your life, as everybody else's lives, a lot easier. And the relative value of your services, it's really easy to put everything in the high value and high complexity, but look at it against your reality. Awesome. Cool, thank you for that, Hugo. Do you want to just pass back? Yep, excellent. So I'm just going to share one more thing with you, just as a little bit of fun after this, and then we'll do some Q&A. So just for fun, one of the things that we developed a couple of months ago was around PMO superheroes. And you can actually go and find out what PMO superhero you are at futurepmo.com. It's just a simple quiz. You don't have to put your details in to get the result or anything like that. But it will tell you whether you're maybe a Batman or Captain Marvel or maybe Superwoman or maybe even Master Jedi Yoda. So have a look, and again, you can share it directly from the quiz itself. We love to see these, and we also have kind of articles on each kind of PMO superhero and some of the characteristics that you might actually see. So do go have a play when you do need to procrastinate for 5 minutes, and yeah, let us know what you get. Hugo, do you want to go to questions, Q&A, if we've got time?
Yes, I will do. Yes, it's now 9 minutes to, so we do have plenty of time. Someone has asked, can you put the contact details screen up again? So if I carry on with the questions, would you like to go back to slide 2 in your presentation? Someone has also asked, Fernan Rodriguez has asked, what's the difference between a PMO and project controls?
That's a very interesting question. It's the naming convention of PMOs I always find fascinating, and I have quite a controversial view that it doesn't really matter what you call it. What's important are the services that you offer your customers. So I have a client that they don't like the term PMO because it sounds like structure and discipline, so they just call it a change office. In terms of the kind of official definitions, a PM project management office or program or portfolio is supporting that piece, whereas a project controls is more focused on the control element, so more the assurance, the metric, tactical side of it. The PMO generally tends to be a bit broader, so what we tend to find is that we're also looking at some more strategic elements like demand, capacity and alignment to strategic objectives, and also we've got the people side, so making sure that we're enabling that capability, that we're really supporting people to have confidence in their role and the skills they have in order to do that role. Hopefully that's helped.
Fantastic. Bomik Raval asks, given that we've already got this wonderful tool for doing an PMO MOT, who can do a PMO MOT? Other organizations out there that are also capable of doing it?
So the MOT I think is unique to Wellington because I developed it a few weeks ago after doing lots of research. So no, I don't think the MOT exists anywhere else, although I mean some people may have picked it up. We did a webinar on it, which is the video that you see that kind of goes through the how-to with PMI Spain and also here in the UK about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I don't think the PMO MOT exists anywhere else. Like I say, it's downloadable, it's free, so you can use it. The maturity assessment, if you did want to have that, that's a little bit different. So there are lots of different maturity assessments out there. We certainly offer that as well. We have a couple of different versions. One is very specific to PMO because a lot of the other not competence frameworks, maturity assessments don't have any focus on the PMO. They're kind of on the skills, but not how the PMO manages and enables change. So yeah, I think some of them are very specific to Wellington. We do have a particular interest in PMO, which is where we've got the Future PMO conference and the awards and lots of other stuff. So we do tend to push out and develop a lot of stuff that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Fantastic. Project management professional and various other industry standards suggest a huge number of tools and techniques. This is from Bansi Dave. Do you believe PMOs should help guide project managers to deliver more efficiently?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, that kind of project management support is absolutely key. In terms of tooling, I do have a webinar coming up that is talking about kind of the amount of different tools and techniques that are out there that organizations can pick and choose from. And it's easier when you're kind of, well, we're aligned to the PMI body of knowledge, or we're aligned to somebody else, to kind of go, those are the tools that we're using. Having said that, there's a lot that's emerging. There's a lot of different ideas and concepts that are emerging that organizations really would like to grab hold of. And I think I mentioned it earlier, you wouldn't, if you have a leak in your house, you wouldn't expect a plumber to come up with just a wrench. You'd expect him to come with a toolbox full of different tools, a proper kit to do the analysis and to really fix whatever the issue is. For me, project management is the same. I kind of encourage people to look at the reality and take the bits from different ways of working that are going to work for you, because I wouldn't ever expect a project manager to come and with just one toolkit. I expect them to come with a variety of things, so we can say, do you know what, this is where project management bricolage comes into play, where we start off in, let's say, waterfall, more of a waterfall approach, because we need to justify our business case. No one's going to ever give us a blank check in a business to do a project that we think is a good idea, so we need to justify that. But then there might be some process re-engineering work. Historically, what people tend to do is the project manager kind of tries to do it with a BA. And actually, we've got lots of Lean or Six Sigma people in the business because it was fashionable 15 years ago. So we've all got people knocking about that have those skills. So rather than try and fit the skills into somebody that's not their core element, is, well, let's bring a Lean Six Sigma person in. We know we have them. And then there might be some agile work because there's an IT element that we have to do some development. So let's bring in one of the agile teams to help with that, and we've got to do some change management, so let's bring in somebody that's done change management, because just after Lean Six Sigma, change management was fashionable. So we have people who are trained in all this stuff, but then we might want to finish our project in a more of a waterfall fashion because we want to do that in a controlled way. So for me, it's about equipping yourself with a toolkit that spans. You don't have to be a practitioner and have depth expertise across everything, but it helps to at least understand what they each do and surround yourself with people who have those skills. And then we build our projects in a more logical fashion. Hopefully that was a really long-winded way of answering that question.
Fantastic. We've got about 3 minutes to go. Peter Gilliland asks, have there been any studies that you're aware of that confirm or otherwise the PMO's added value to an organization? There are quite a lot of questions, but we'll answer them in writing afterwards.
That's fine. So we are seeing that different research is saying. So the PMI Pulse of the Profession talked about kind of the governance models and the PMO. Certainly, we're just finalising our annual research. We have a whole section in the PMOs, you can imagine, because I work here, and we are seeing that the perception of the value of PMO is getting bigger. People are believing that it will add value to project management as a discipline. What people are lacking is the know-how to really leverage the PMO. And I think whereas historically people were like, it's not valuable, it doesn't really add anything. A lot of that, I believe, is because PMOs were very prescribed. You have a PMO of this size and therefore you do these 5 things. If we switch that and think about our customers and what they need, and we're delivering value for them, we are starting to see the value. So if you look at the PMI Pulse of the Profession, at Wellington, ours will be released very soon. It's called State of Project Management, and you can see where some of that information and data is actually coming from. But we are seeing a shift in that. Like I say, I think people are seeing the value, but they just don't have the know-how to really leverage it right now yet. In some organizations, some are doing it great. We've got lots of case studies where we can show that the PMO's added value down to the number, where they've added, points in kind of a KPMG audit, as an example, is one of our clients. By putting in a PMO, they moved a whole point on their next year's audit. So there are some real tangible things in our case studies as well that you can see.
Fantastic. There are more questions. As I say, they will be answered in writing and then attached to the write-up of the webinar. The write-up of the webinar will probably go up within the next few hours, and the answers to the questions will be added on within the next couple of weeks. There are a couple of questions that are relevant to asking in the last 30 seconds. So is the future PMO event happening by Joanne Lavenouet?
So at the moment, as you can imagine, it's on the 1st of October. We are planning to make a decision at the end of this month as to whether we're going to go ahead or we're going to turn it virtual or do something else. So I can't answer that right just yet. Give me a few weeks.
And I think some people are asking, the MOT link may not be working. So if you can't work it at the moment, then we will make sure that one works for the write-up. And someone else has asked what the PDU code is. It's C075, which means UK, OP3T2T, but you will get that in the email confirming that you attended. I'd just like to thank, on behalf of everybody who's attended, I'd like to thank Emma for this excellent presentation and some excellent knowledge about how PMOs work and some of the most advanced thoughts on how PMOs are developing over these recent years and recent months, and in particular, how to do it virtually. Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you very much, everyone who's attended. Might have worked.